In the vast tapestry of history, some threads are more vibrant than others. But have you ever wondered about those subtle hues that often go unnoticed? Our journey begins in the 1950s, an era where post-war optimism danced cheek to cheek with a certain conservatism. It was a time when everyone's lawns were ideally mowed, and yet, underneath this polished surface, there was a secret world of communication blossoming in its own colourful way. Imagine yourself strolling through a bustling city park in the 1950s. The air feels fresher, the birds sing classic tunes, and men in sharp suits exchange nods and knowing glances. Herein lies a quaint little tale of secret colour codes, not the grand flags waving proudly, but subtle hints stitched into the everyday fabric of life, visible only to those in the know. Welcome to the story of how gay men in the 1950s found nuanced ways to identify one another. Back in those days, being openly gay wasn't just frowned upon, it was plain illegal in many places. So like great spies in a cloak and dagger film, think less James Bond, more Jimmy Flatcap. Ingenious methods were crafted to connect without uttering a word. The magic lay in a simple accessory, the humble handkerchief. Ah yes, the handkerchief. An item versatile enough to simultaneously wipe away tears and hide one's phlegm. However, during this era, it wielded a much more important purpose. The hanky code, as it came to be known, served as a covert communication device within the gay community. Picture this. A gentleman leisurely pulls a silk handkerchief from his pocket. While it might seem he's simply attending to a sneeze, he is actually sending out a finely embroidered whisper across the social ether. The color of the handkerchief conveyed different meanings. Blue meant he was looking for companionship with a preference, while red symbolized he was searching for something more passionate. The position in which it was worn, left for the active participant and right for the passive, added a further layer of detail. It's like semaphore, but with a twist of romance and a sprinkle of rebellion. Even comprehend this subtle language's complexity required one to almost hold a degree in flag studies, or perhaps just a keen social awareness that only those deeply embedded in the scene possessed. Thus, the parks and bars of 1950s America became vibrant arenas where an entire spectrum of human expression played out silently yet vividly. Now, you might chuckle at the notion of exchanging coded signals with a handkerchief today, considering the beautifully chaotic world of modern online dating where emojis reign supreme. But in the 1950s, it added a touch of intrigue and elegance to the clandestine dance of love. As you drift upon this river of stories from a time gone by, imagine the feeling of finally meeting someone who shared your secret language, the thrill of connection that transcended words. Imagine how the park could transform from an ordinary patch of green into your personal Eden with just a simple nod, a soft smile, and a flicker of color. These moments of magic stitch together a resilient community in ways both bold and beautiful. If these stories help you drift off, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. And before you fully fade into dreamland, I would love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. And so, as the sun sets on this day in the 1950s, leaving our colors to blend seamlessly into the soft hues of twilight, remember, in the world of sleep and history, there are countless threads yet to unravel. As night falls, perhaps it'll inspire dreams filled with footsteps on cobblestones, secret signals, and the timeless quest for understanding. Imagine, if you will, a world where the simple act of wearing a particular piece of clothing could send a clear and daring message. A message as bold as declaring, "I play for the other team." But, without uttering a single word, welcome, dear listener, to the unabashedly stylish yet subtly coded tapestry of the 1950s gay subculture. In this era, subtlety was the name of the game. The color lavender, for instance, was more than just a hue. It was a whispered promise orchestrated against a backdrop of pastels. Lavender, with its elegant softness, cloaked those in the know with an air of both rebellion and dignity. It was often found threading through their neckties or pocket squares, a tender yet defiant presence against a world that insisted on sameness. Now picture yourself strolling through a bustling city street. You're neatly tucked into a dapper brown suit, innocuous enough to pass by any prying eyes unharmed. But tucked beside the strong lines of your collar, there nestles your clandestine shout-out to the world, the handkerchief. In pristine lavender, it flutters like a gentle whisper as you walk, parting the seas of social expectations with every stride. Of course, this visual homonym really takes a bow when you understand just how delicately orchestrated these wardrobe choices needed to be. Each element was a syllable in a silent sentence that said, "We are here. We are living and loving despite it all." And it wasn't just the color lavender that held such mystical orations. Throughout the decade, a marvelous palette of innocuous garments became canvases for a prismatic exchange of signals. Strikingly subtle or eccentrically bold, each piece was a coded message, arranging clandestine meetings or forging new friendships behind the veil of polite society. Bright red socks might signal curiosity or attraction, while a flash of green hidden under a cravat might offer an implicit invitation for deeper connection. If one were lucky, or rather, courageous enough, bright turquoise made a brazen appearance as an eye-catcher, seeking the objet d'amour amongst the rabble. But oh, how it must have taken nerve. The kind of nerve certainly worth 2 scoops of vanilla at your local soda fountain. Now let us not forget the reversible nature of fashion, an eye wink, if you will, to the beguiling coyness of our times. A necktie, flipped under the guise of disorder, revealing a vibrant lining. It's this language of the cloth that professes both art and stealth. It should be said that when night fell, the true magician of disguise thrived in the dim half-light of jazz clubs and speakeasies, where a hastily rolled cuff could invite a peppery exchange or return a tight-lipped smile. There, beneath the lilting notes of a sax clarinet, the mellow rumble of urban night offered both the rhythm and the veil for gay men seeking kindred spirits, all disguised under the guises of just another Tuesday. It is with such sensitivity and stirring wit that, in their own way, these men reinvented themselves against constrained societal norms, setting trends that would later transform with greater political and cultural fervor come the decades that followed. The butterfly emerging from its cocoon was once a darling caterpillar donning a lilac scarf. Thus, this symphony of color and clothing became a midnight waltz, rotating on a dance floor of woven secrets during those smoky, sepia-strewn evenings. The whirlwind created by silken hues and quilted whispers still echoes today, reverberating through time like a genteel, respectful storm. So, as you nestle deeper into your pillows, imagine plumes of lavender wafting gently over your dreams as you drift, a gentle cue, perhaps, to what comes next in our story. In the tranquility of post-war America, where highways spun like lazy evening yarns and diners served coffee with a wink, a clandestine code of colors started to bloom. Picture the 1950s, a time when rock and roll was cutting its teeth and television sets beamed black and white dreams into living rooms that smelled faintly of TV dinners and optimism. It was on these monochrome roads, with their perfectly pruned lawns and hedge-hidden secrets, that a palette of subtle signals began to paint the world of gay men. This, dear listener, was no ordinary rainbow. It was the coded language of handkerchiefs, a silent semaphore developed at a time when open expressions of gay identity were as frowned upon as a mismatched tie and shirt. But never fear, for ingenuity is the mother of invention, and necessity the father of ingenuity. Or perhaps, in this case, the quirky uncle. Imagine stepping into a smoky bar, the hum of a jukebox in the background playing the latest croon about heartbreak under the moonlight. A gentleman stands by the counter, ordering a double, while casually, oh so casually, a handkerchief hangs from his back pocket. A simple accessory, you might think. But not just any handkerchief, my night owl unfurling your wings. Indeed, it was the very hallmark of a hidden community. Colors suddenly had meanings deeper than Crayola. Blue, for instance, without a doubt, hinted at a penchant for traditional pairs, while red, much like Dorothy's ruby slippers, promised an adventure somewhere beyond the mundane. Yellow, like a gentle reminder to not take life too seriously, could mean a fellow was seeking some light-hearted companionship. And while the palette was diverse, the message was clear. There was more than what met the eye. Now let's delve into why green was so very daring. This leafy hue, borrowing its shade from the most secretive garden party you were never invited to, symbolized those who were, shall we say, financially considerate. A green hanky was the homing beacon for company requiring compensation. No judgment here, of course. Everyone had to pay the milkman somehow. We must not overlook black, that classic of all classics, synonymous with chic sophistication from little dresses to dapper suits. Black said, "I've been kissed by a mystery, and I quite enjoyed it." Of course, for those extra adventurous souls in post-war America, it could mean an inclination toward more shadowy escapades. Nevertheless, these codes were stitched not merely into the fabric of handkerchiefs, but into the dense tapestry of a community growing behind closed doors, and sometimes, even in furtive glances, exchanged across a crowded room. The handiwork behind handkerchiefs was both personal art and public signal, like a whisper thrown across a field with marvelous precision. The sparkling malts and pool halls weren't just venues for idle chatter or hooves tapping to the sound of saxophones. They became cultural quilting bees, loosely tying like-minded patchworks into a broader cloak knitted with shared understanding. Indeed, what the mainstream missed, the knowing smile of a bartender or the tilt of a cigarette holder, often betrayed. However, dear listener, as you drift through the meandering lanes of this woven history, one realizes that while this chapter of fabric expressions carries subtle idealism, it also bore the promise of future possibilities. This world, knitted in half-murmured hues and secret codes, was ever expanding, slowly moving towards brighter days when colors could splash more freely, without needing the convenient shield of coded intent. As you melt into the comfort of your softly cushioned thoughts, consider those nights when color told tales, whispered in back rooms, revealed hidden corridors, and painted paths to secret destinations under the moon's indulgent watch. Let this delicate legacy wrap you in a warmth pulled equally by truth and time as we continue further into our journey, ever unfurling mysteries and humming stories left behind by the quiet yet colorful footsteps of history. In the shadowy corners of 1950s society, where conformity reigned with an iron fist and every gentleman's suit seemed to be cut from the same dull cloth, there lurked a world of vibrant subtleties, a place where the power of a well-placed handkerchief could speak volumes in whispers that the roaring night alone could decipher. Yes, dear sleepy wanderer through time, welcome to the clandestine symphony of color-coded signals, skillfully mastered by the gay men of this introspective epoch. Picture yourself strolling down the bustling streets of 1950s San Francisco, a city famed for its fog, its trolley cars, and its unique blend of cultural eccentricity. The sidewalks are alive with purpose, a ballet of polished shoes and newspaper boys. Suddenly, your eye catches a fleeting glimpse of something daringly unconventional. A gentleman, dapper in his charcoal grey suit, elegantly flips out a handkerchief from his pocket. Not white, not checkered, but a bold hue of lavender. Ah, the lavender scare. While not quite as famed as the Red Scare, this period of intense fear and suspicion targeted gay men and lesbians, striking terror into the hearts of many. Yet those radically brave lavender handkerchiefs were not mere fashion statements. They were signals, a secret handshake made visible, a quiet rebellion against that stifling status quo. The semiotics of these colorful hints danced cleverly through the minds of those sharp enough to discern them. You see, this subtle coding system spanned beyond mere survival. It was social networking, long before the age of Wi-Fi and friend requests. The lavender square, peeking from a gentleman's chest pocket, might just as well have said, "Here, in this crowded sea of anonymity, is a person like you. Now, as you shuffle under the cozy weight of your blanket, consider the achingly beautiful complexity of communicating without words. You know those dreams where you try to speak, but no sound comes out. In this vivid tapestry of midnight glances and discreet nods, silence wasn't just golden, it was a rainbow of resilience. With each flick of their wrists, countless men painted a world only they could inhabit fully, both an art form and a necessity. Consider also the strategic mind of someone like Joseph Alsop, a prominent journalist of the era. By day, sharing tea with political luminaries. By night, weaving through gatherings where the language of the pocket square was fluent and revealing. One wrong hue might spill your secret, forever tied to that demure but enigmatic piece of cloth. Oh, the sweet thrill of getting it just right, you might dreamily muse. A carefully placed signal in the left pocket could mean you're looking, while in the right pocket, it could be an open declaration of commitment, or possibly a preference for board games over cocktails. Oh, the whimsy of such symbolic nuance. Yet, each color carried its own tabulated guide, a vast glossary inscribed invisibly on the conscious minds that bore them. As you unfurl from the stories of lavender and its whispered brotherhood, imagine a serene stroll back through the pages of possibility as the moonlight creeps tenderly through your window. The heartbeats of those before seem to echo softly in your own, drumming out a lullaby meant to usher a most cherished peace. Yes, the enchantment of understanding without being understood, a tender comfort these gentlemen sought and shared beneath such heavy societal cloaks. What dreams can bloom in one's heart without the weight of words? What stories remain unspoken, carried only by the hues we choose to show the world? Throughout all these flickering moments, our journey continues ever so gently. And though the scents of lavender might gradually fade into history's fabric, their secret language remains, a beautiful nod to the resilience found in the art of quiet defiance. Settle your thoughts as the pages shift tenderly onward into a world where clandestine communication finds an ever-creative playground. Feel yourself drift into the gentle realms of sleep, all while the mysteries of history unfurl just beyond your dreaming gaze. In the twilight of post-war America, a kaleidoscope of colored accessories, particularly the humble handkerchief, became a nuanced language and a secret code for gay men seeking subtle connection amid the shadows. This clandestine form of communication was ingeniously simple. Wear a color-coded hanky in your back pocket to signal your preferences, much like an auditory Morse code dance, but worn visibly. And because, well, semaphore flags are a touch impractical for evening wear. To the untrained observer, the handkerchief was merely a functional piece of fabric, perfect for mopping up a spilled drink, hemming an improvised picnic napkin, or, heaven forbid, wiping a brow in the stifling summer heat. But to those in the know, these fabric squares were vibrant brushstrokes painting a hidden tapestry, a quiet rebellion against a monochrome world. Let's set the scene. We find ourselves nestled in a bustling dive bar, tucked away in the cozy corner of a little-known neighborhood. It's the kind of place where the jukebox croons classics that dazzle with a dusty charm, and the carpet holds the world's record for spilled secrets. Men drift in like ships returning from stormy seas, their journeys etched on lined faces and weary shoulders. They're searching, not so much for treasure, but for those rare moments of understanding. Tonight, amidst the comfortable din, a man with a mustard-yellow hanky peeking out from his left pocket makes his entrance. To most, he's just another part of the scenery, but to the knowledgeable patron scanning for signposts, this particular shade might as well be a beacon. You see, in the complex cartography of hanky codes, mustard yellow whispered, "You're in for a treat, if by treat you mean all the allure of a sensual mustard bath." A man with a dainty navy blue hanky catches his eye, a hue indicating, perhaps, a preference for the delicious art of cuddling, or extremely naval roleplays. Take your pick. They share a quick, knowing glance, a quiet agreement forged in peripheral vision. Such was the necessity when discretion was sicut paramount. It was a world where subtle glance versations were paramount, and trusting a fabric swatch to convey your innermost desires seemed entirely sensible and, yes, wonderfully rebellious. But what of those who couldn't decode this colourful cipher? The unwitting, uninitiated folk whose minds reeled at such clandestine complexities. They, perhaps, imagined a drapery disaster remains, or a colour-loving cult converging under cover of night. And so unfurled the lives of these unsung cartographers, charting social maps with calm ingenuity. Each shade carried revelations, henna signaling their affinity for rough and tumble adventures, cowboy-themed fantasy with a side of rustic denial, and black suggesting kinship with the sinfully stylish. The code's beauty lay not only in its subtlety, but also in its capacity for reinvention. New colors emerged as communities grew bolder and played their symphony of signals in an ever-vivid chromatic crescendo. Maroon, goldenrod, and even beige would join this unified field of color theory, each requiring its own deciphering and earning its rightful place in the lexicon of love. Beneath the laughter and the complex harmonies, these were men authoring their own stories, crafting tales of triumph cloaked in subtlety and woven into the colors of Americana. They listened, danced, and lived in spaces where every thread helped to sew a gesture or two of kindness, offered even by the slightest brush of fabric against fabric. Now, as our imaginary bar grows dimmer and the jukebox spills its final tune, these men will drift away like dandelion seeds, inconspicuous to the casual observer, yet bearing worlds inside, ready to blossom where they land. With each festively colored puff of cotton, they murmur dreams and desires that the world one day dared to catch. As the night winds down, so too must our brief sojourn into the technicolor language of hankies gently conclude. But fear not, dear listener, for next we shall journey onward to explore further corners of this intriguing realm, where other such whispers of history patiently await to be unearthed by curious minds and sleepy eyes. So as you nestle into your dreams, consider this as yet another thread in history's great tapestry, woven with care, color, and just a pinch of panache. In the soft glow of mid-century lamplight, deep within the bustling fabric of post-war America, a secret code fluttered through the shadows, as vibrant yet understated as the people who wove it into their daily lives. Here, in the ornate gay ballrooms and dimly lit alleys of the 1950s, the language of color quietly echoed across the dance floors and whispered in the hushed corners of snug diners. Gentle listeners, let me introduce you to the captivating world where a simple accessory had the power of a secret handshake. It was the tie, yes, the humble tie, swirling in myriad hues, each shade a sly wink, a coy smile, an encoded message of affinity and interest beneath, the stern stare of a buttoned-up decade. Picture a bustling street corner, shuffling feet, the aroma of freshly baked bread mingling with city soot. Amidst all this stands a man, dapper and discreet, his tie gently swaying in the wind, a dreamy lavender hue that, to the uninformed, whispers of elegant taste. To those in the know, however, it whispered, "Perhaps we share more than style here." Lavender, sweet and subtle, began to quietly mark itself as a symbol of camaraderie for those living on society's periphery. And so, sitting in the snug booths of life, did these fellows find a way to skirt the silent, scrutinizing gaze of those who might not understand. In fact, the very colors draped casually around their necks became a silky thread, weaving networks of connection and camaraderie across the nation. What a sweet, conspiratorial dance it was. Imagine the sly exchange of smiles over rimmed glasses during a casual Wednesday matinee, or the gentle tilt of a head, acknowledging a shared secret and a lived experience. The palette of motifs and hues stitched into the folds of these ties had a world of meaning, a spectrum beyond the straightforward blue or red. Let's pause our stroll down this colourful lane and glance at another remarkable hue, green. Here in our world of covert expressions, green didn't just stand for the hope of budding trees or the hue of envied eyes. No, in this world it subtly signified exploration, a candid curiosity for the unknowns of companionship, and perhaps, in some circles, the gentle inclination towards trying something new or different. It was as if the men donning these verdant tones were saying with a delicate bow of their heads, "Is this hue piquing your interest as it does mine?" And while lavender and green performed their tender waltz in the evenings, they did so accompanied by the robust richness of burgundy, the seasoned older sibling of this chromatic family. Burgundy spoke of an experienced heart, perhaps one that had seen too many moons to still believe in unbridled dreams, yet it throbbed with the remnants of youthful zeal. It was as if the men in Burgundy declared, "I've stories to tell, should you choose to listen." As we blend these fragments of colour and meaning, the tapestry of the 1950s, stitched lovingly by those who lived in the margins, comes to life in a silky embrace. The night's air thick with unspoken words, and the fluorescence of day hiding intimate whispers. Can you see it? A palette shared, a secret kept, a community bound together by the mere absence of sound and kaleidoscopic shades clinging to the necks of men in crowded coffee shops and quiet park benches. And so, beloved listener, as the layers of yesteryears unravel softly and you drift upon dreams woven from unsung stories of lavender mornings and the rustle of an elegant swipe of a tie, let the gentle cadence of our tale rock you into the next slumberous chapter. Let us slip back again to the cobbled streets where these colours still roam in forgotten whispers, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be told. In the hush of post-war 1950s, America, a quiet revolution unfolded under the dim glow of street lamps and tinkling jazz notes, where the seemingly innocuous signals of colour became a covert language. A single, carefully chosen shade of fabric could speak volumes, like one of Grandma Ethel's deliciously scandalous anecdotes whispered over the finest bone china. This was the time of the colour-coded bandana, campus-coded ties, and hanky codes, acting as wordless whispers, hinting at secret understandings known to those in the loop. Imagine, if you will, a young gentleman named Charlie. Now, Charlie isn't just any run-of-the-mill mid-century fellow. His hair is slick with enough pomade to be seen from the moon, and his wit is sharp enough to slice through the thickest of awkward silences. He had a penchant for the colour lavender, an innocent choice in a some pre-millennial world, yet potent with a hidden meaning. Lavender, you see, was no mere pigment. It was a banner of the unspoken, a flag that signaled membership in a circle whose boundaries were marked by discretion and coded colours. Lavender had become somewhat of a code purple during this era, silently reshaping lives with its inclusion in neckties, socks, and the fine yet resistant fibres of one's blazer lining. Charlie, wearing such delicate shades, would stroll confidently through smoky jazz clubs and muted sidewalks, his lavender hint a lighthouse beam to others who might understand the significance. It whispered secrets, beckoning those like him with promises of camaraderie and stolen moments of connection. Yet not all was fabric and flirtation, for in the shadowy recesses of tailor shops and department store fitting rooms, whispered exchanges would decide which suit, tie, or pocket square carried the clandestine message. Take, for instance, the good-humoured Mr. Jenkins, the local tailor. If you dared to order a lavender lining in your jacket, he'd arch an amused brow and give a nod, his needle deftly wielding both craftsmanship and confidentiality. His knowing smile was his only disclosure, bringing new meaning to the phrase wink and a nod. Colleges, with their sprawling lawns and academic fervour, were also in on this chromatic code. Ties of all colors adorned the halls of academia, but those hued in lavender did more than suggest mere school spirit. They infused a sense of belonging, of a second alma mater, untaught by professors in lecture halls, but living class notes in the hidden curriculums of companionship and unspoken alliance. When the afternoon sun dipped to the horizon, casting a lavender glow over the cityscape, friendships formed under this lilac code would gather in living rooms. Here, the air was thick with quietude, jazz softly orchestrating each clandestine chat, while lavender cushions dotted the room, a subtle, yet constant, companion underscoring the silent symphony of shared secrets. Events, unfurling with their promise of evening glamour, also bore witness to this understated communication. Young men and women glided across dance floors in veiled pastels, invited and introduced by their discerning sartorial choices, while lavender invitations discreetly sifted through the mailbox, a paper-bound gateway to gatherings where everyone understood, and no one need speak it aloud. It is in such moments, where lavender tied them together, these souls found solace and solidarity against the backdrop of an era full of unsaid words. Amidst the vibrant tapestry of the 1950s, every shade, every thread, was stitched with stories of those who dared to define their own tapestry, one subtle color code at a time. And as the evening stretched on, so did the deceptively woven threads of understanding and belonging, promising more narratives yet to unfold. The essence of 1950s lavender remains tucked in between pages of history books, a silent tribute to those who spun worlds with color, their tales folded neatly in the patchwork of time. As one continues down this lane of chromatic curiosity, there lies another trail yet untrodden, woven into the intricate fabric of history's garment. Amid the gentle hum of the 1950s, a time where everything seemed clad in sepia, there danced a secret rainbow that painted the lives of many men in hues unseen by the general populace. Yes, dear listener, while everyone else saw only the robust presence of cream and chrome that defined the decade, a hidden spectrum cleverly draped across lapels, decorating pockets, and peeking from beneath the mundane ties and drab business suits, linking the lives of gay men in whispered symphony. In those years, discretion was the key, but creativity was the lockpick that silently burst open closets across the land. Let us take a dreamy stroll through the world of color-coded handkerchiefs, lovingly referred to as hankies. These weren't just handkerchiefs, they were badges of honor, postcards of identity, and occasionally a semaphore for saucy suggestions. Imagine the scene: a bustling train terminal, or maybe a dimly lit, half-forgotten bar, the air thick with tobacco smoke and swirling jazz. Somewhere in the midst of this, two gentlemen stand, carefully disguised in their exchanges, yet a fleeting glance at a brightly colored handkerchief tucked into a pocket could light up skies like a firework on the 4th of July. A subtle dance, unnoticed by most, but understood by those familiar with its steps. Talk about accessorizing with purpose. Different colors, different intentions. A blue hanky, perhaps indicating a man in search of something akin to Cupid's touch, while a red one might lean more toward, shall we say, adventurous pursuits. Lavender, forever the elegant hue, spoke of a desire for friendship, or maybe just a good old-fashioned chinwag over coffee. And then there were others as Eden, and a veritable spectrum, broadcasting a range of tastes and desires, closet-coded for the initiated. It was secrecy, infused with sartorial grace, a fashion revolution disguised as a game of hide-and-seek. Not listed in any fashion magazine, yet known intimately by those who spun the web of its suggestive threads. There's something earnestly whimsical about the choice of fabric as both mask and message board. Handkerchiefs had, for generations, been the acclaimed knights of tissue paper, waving gallantly in the hand of a damsel distressed by dramatic cinema, or the quick-to-appear savior of a shirt sullied by mischief mustard. Little did people know that lurking in the pocket of the man beside them was a vivid teller of truth, a purveyor of identity, neatly ironed, perfectly folded. Now, if anyone were to ask how a simple piece of fabric could manage such vital communication without uttering a single word, well, that's the magic of ingenuity against the odds, isn't it? Like finding poetry in the footnotes or uncovering confetti in a stack of tax forms, these men turned the mundane into a quiet song of self. And let's not forget the sense of community this colorful connection fostered. Before the age of apps that swipe left and right, before the bright lights of nightclubs, men of similar persuasions found solace and solidarity in the slight flutter of fabric, in the shared understanding that they were not alone. For what is a community, if not a shared understanding, even if the map is a patchwork of patches? So, as you nestle down deeper, folding yourself into blankets like a thought into a cozy cocoon, remember that these simple acts of creativity carried vibrant messages of self-expression. Behind every flicker of color, there danced stories, some whispered and fleeting, others lingering and hopeful. As you let this thought embrace you, drift softly, knowing that hidden within the subtle creases of history, there are always stories waiting to unfold. Awaiting the curious eyes that can see beyond the ordinary, and with the soft murmur of stories yet to be told, the night winds on, singing tales of yore while you slip into the gentle grasp of the dreams that call your name. In the 1950s, James Baldwin was not just an influential writer, he was also a man of many hues, both literally and metaphorically. Picture this: the bustling streets of New York, the air filled with the aroma of roasting chestnuts and the sound of jazz wafting through speakeasy windows. This was a time when the city served as a canvas for Baldwin's colorful life, where he painted his truth with shades invisible to most. During this era, a time when conformity was the unseasoned broth of society's soup, subtle color codes became a secret language for gay men, a language as nuanced as the many shades of gray in a black and white film. Among the most vibrant of these codes was a bright red necktie. To the untrained eye, it was just an accessory, albeit a rather dashing one. But within the community, it signified a dare, a dandy little detail shouting in whispers, "Yes, me too." Imagine walking along the bustling boulevards of Manhattan, perhaps taking in the display windows of Macy's, where mannequins posed with the stillness of secret keepers. A man sporting such a tie might pass another, both nodding in a manner that seemed merely courteous. In reality, these nods were exchanges of recognition, each knowing that the other's wardrobe choice was as intentional as tax season procrastination. Speaking of intentionality, one must not forget the handkerchief. No, not the simple white kind that might flutter elegantly from a suit pocket like a handkerchief dove. This was a time when a handkerchief in another color could flutter quite a different signal. Blue and green in particular might tell a tale as old as time, one rooted in the need to belong, yet under the constant gaze of an ever-watchful society, suspicious of colors too dazzlingly off-palette. With bashful creativity, different hues carried their own messages, and as cumbersome as these hidden codes might have seemed, they were born out of necessity, a playful yet severe rebellion against the drab monotony of enforced normalcy. During this time, fashion sketches and secret signals were as essential as letters folded with private promises, exchanged in shadows that danced away from the glaring light of day. Now, let us delve deeper into an unexpected beauty, the color pink. Long before the cheerful rescue of flamingos from their zoo enclosures could ever be imagined, this soft and often misunderstood shade was already hard at work in places like underground bars. These bars, with their jazz ensembles and dim lighting, served as sanctuaries. Here, pink was whispered into the threads of shirts and jackets, a color code for companionship that demanded discretion, yet offered an unspoken understanding, much like a shared secret hidden behind a gentle smile. The surface, These men might seem like everyday spectators of a black and white world, yet they carried a spectrum of whispered truths just beneath their outer layers. By inviting others to glance beneath the colors they wore, they crafted connection amid chaos, a dance as choreographed as any Broadway show, featuring roles scripted by those who cherished privacy as much as passion. As we drift through this monochromatic world punctuated by vibrancy, consider how not just the colors, but the men who wore them, contributed to a clandestine camaraderie. With each red pinstripe, or blushing pocket square, they propelled the scrutinizing skepticism of the times into a conversation rooted in courage and companionship. And so, we leave Baldwin's New York behind us, transitioning gently to another chapter of this vibrant tale. As the sleepy cityscape fades into a twilight of shared codes, nestled snugly within the plays and parlors of history, we prepare to discover more hues hiding within, the shadows of the past. In the gentle twinkle of mid-century America, a time when men wore fedoras as often as they smiled, there existed a secret language whispered not through words, but through the subtle dance of colors. In the 1950s, a time painted with conformity and shadowed secrecy, gay men found a way to communicate amidst the mainstream's monotone hum. Prepare yourself for an old Technicolor adventure of ingenious fashion, where the hue of your necktie could be more revealing than any diary. Consider the humble handkerchief, or hanky if you were feeling particularly breezy. Nestled in the back pocket of many men's trousers, this unassuming square promised to be a pain reliever for colds or allergies. Yet, within the gay community, it served another, far more clandestine purpose. Picture this: sliding into a dimly lit bar, illuminated by the pale glow of neon signs, where jean pockets silently spoke volumes. Each hanky, depending on its shade and placement, told a story, a personal advertisement in a world where personal ads didn't quite provide what was needed. At first, the hanky code was far simpler than you might imagine, although deciphering it today might feel akin to cracking the Da Vinci Code. The basic law went: blue in the left pocket meant you had all the sweetness of sugar plums, or more specifically, you were a gentleman who thirsted for gentleness. Worn in the right pocket, blue translated your role into one more fitting of a lumberjack, or to be specific again, someone yearning for the thrill of a rugged dance. If you saw yellow handkerchiefs, well, let's just say they weren't advertising the price of lemonade. The chart of colors expanded over the years, like a rainbow after a storm, each shade offering a hint, a giggle, or perhaps a blush. One can't help but think of the likely pickpocket who inadvertently became fluent in this fine textiled language while sneaking pocket to pocket. It must have been quite the education. Imagine the office water cooler gossip as these pickpockets assembled their rogue curriculum vitae. Then there was the work of Beverly Hills fashionista William Newton Ladd, a pioneer in the realm of male wardrobe revolution. He dared to market flamboyance and freedom from the Pasadena high streets down to Florida's beachfronts. With discreet winks and unexpected jests, he once said, "If I've ignited a spectrum fancier than life itself, then my tie-dyed dream is complete." Of course, such revolutionaries often ignited an array of conversations, sometimes courtesy of a gossip columnist blistering from the glory of freshly applied red lipstick. Even beyond the hankies, the ties too played their own sly games. Picture vibrant ties, carefully knotted, refer to secret meetings and chance encounters that only a selective few would truly understand. Some folks swore that the infamous polka dot tie favored by the Broadway stars had less to do with style and more to do with signaling a fondness for the arts, with a capital A in all its sensuous shades. While the outside world busied itself with hula hoops and jitterbugs, this hidden spectrum of dissent, all those cheeky hues, told a broader story of defiance, of love whispered through caresses of silk and cotton. For some reason, picturing the meticulous sorting of laundry takes on a melodramatic edge when one imagines the multicolored methodology. So as you, dear listener, slide further into the arms of slumber, Let your imagination drift down these technicolor lanes. Picture the charming images of rainbow handkerchiefs fluttering like clandestine butterflies. As you drift, remember that every color can be a story, an exploration, an adventure trapped in fabric. Let the dreams wash over you like a gentle breeze as we edge towards our next whimsical journey. And as a whisper of midnight lulls you, imagine the slight murmur of history beckoning us onward, beyond the threshold of what's known, eagerly anticipating what vibrant tales await in the shadows. In the soft glow of the mid-century moonlight, there was a quiet but vibrant tapestry of signals and subtle codes used by those who weren't quite allowed to shine so openly. Picture the world of the 1950s, a neat, post-war canvas freshly painted with cookie-cutter houses, spotless picket fences, and somewhere tucked away, a rather fabulous clandestine party just waiting to burst into neon. Amidst this black and white backdrop, the vibrant threads of gay culture subtly wove themselves into the seams of everyday life, appearing almost like a secret embroidery only the in-the-know could identify. If you were to walk the bustling streets of New York or San Francisco, or even a quaint little diner somewhere in Middle America, you might catch a glimpse of a particular splash of color, a coded nod and wink to those who dared to dance outside the lines. A red necktie, a discreet yet bold statement, could be more than just an accessory to someone who understood its language. This was a time when colors were not yet political statements on a grand scale, but were, rather cleverly, utilized in the most personal of revolutions. Gay men, searching for connection amidst societal whispers, turned to these color codes as beacons. They were markers, nothing like a fashion faux pas, but hints of a secret world only a lucky few could translate. And what about the infamous green carnation boutonniere? Oscar Wilde would have chuckled from his Victorian leather-bound chair, monocle firmly in place, sipping tea and perhaps something a smidgen stronger. Green carnations, though faded from their original turn-of-the-century bravado, still sprouted occasionally in lapels as a token of camaraderie and a nod to Wilde's own cheeky rebellion. Ponder for a moment the dilemma of choosing just the right silk scarf in a dapper hue at the department store. Was it whimsical and barely their lavender? Or did one dare to go full chartreuse? Each shade told a story. Each pattern sang a melody only attuned to certain ears, knitting together a silent brotherhood bound by shared glances across a room. The complexity extended beyond color to the intricate dance of accessories. A pinky ring, deliberately worn and strategically flashed, spoke volumes to those who could listen without ears. It became a symbol of solidarity and resistance in its own elegant way, helping individuals find each other in a sea of conventional jewelry. And let us not forget handkerchiefs. In some circles, a plain white handkerchief could express class and sophistication, but fold it just so, or embroider it with a faintly arched eyebrow with just the right set of initials, and suddenly it became a flirty semaphore of identity. It's a cozy comfort to imagine how, within these color-coded practices, lived a sense of hope, a rebellious resilience in an era where open identity was often stifled. Colors transcended their mundane use as mere segments of the rainbow, transforming into guiding stars. They served as soft feathers in the hat, loud and proud for someone in the know, yet invisible to the rest, ensuring safety within boldness. As whispers of change began to echo throughout the 1960s, these codes started to evolve. But during this particular post-war decade, they flourished in their own brightly shadowed way, leaving an indelible mark on history's great patchwork quilt of humanity. Continuing our journey through this delightful exploration, perhaps we might discover how these quiet connections gave birth to bolder strides, or maybe we'll uncover even wilder, more colorful antics that these pioneers dared to adopt. But for now, let your thoughts wander peacefully, weaving through this intricate tapestry of the past as the evening gently hums to a close. As you gently sink deeper into your bed, snugly wrapped in your favorite blanket. We find ourselves wandering through the colorful lanes of the 1950s, a decade that, at first glance, might have seemed as straightforward as black and white TV. Yet, if you looked a little closer, the world was bursting with shades more subtle and vibrant than a rock and roll record. In this chapter, let's meander carefully through the charming complexity of how gay men used colors, fashion, and even everyday objects to signal to each other in an era when secrecy was a way of life. Picture yourself in a typical 1950s American city. Main Street is bustling. Poodle skirts are making circles of fabric spin joyfully with every step, and cars boasting fins that look like they belong on an intergalactic spaceship glide down the road. But beneath this mainstream symphony of the starched and peppy lies a silent, vivid choreography of signals so subtle they would be unnoticed by anyone not attuned to this secret ballet. Enter the humble handkerchief. Yes, the very same piece of cloth that might occupy a refined gentleman's breast pocket or execute a considerate rescue of a damsel's teardrop. Yet, for the gay community, this accessory had a language all its own. Known as the handkerchief code, each color and position told a different story, almost like a secret handshake for those in the know. A man with a red handkerchief peeking discreetly from his right back pocket might have been politely advertising his interest in a passive position during an interaction, while the left pocket indicated an active preference. Quite the reversal from having your fortune read via palmistry, wasn't it? With every step, a sway of fabric might speak volumes, and a splash of color could whisper 1,000 unsaid desires. The modesty of lavenders and pastels came to represent something more than a penchant for fashion-forward thinking. Lavender had been associated with homosexuality since the turn of the century, largely due to the pinky purple of the flower being viewed as a symbol of the blending of masculine and feminine traits. The color code expanded beyond the delicate border of fabric, shapes, and hues into realms as mundane as keychains or socks. It was an artistry of secrecy, where every detail could unfurl a story if you just knew how to look. Lavender ties and shirts expressed more than just fancy attire. And let's not forget about the dazzling array of other hues employed by this clandestine communication method. Green signaled hustlers, mustard symbolized sex. And did you know that black wasn't just about slimming effects, but expressed an interest in matters best left to the privacy of shadows? It was a wardrobe that turned mundane walks into an enigmatic waltz. The subtlety didn't end with fashion. Codes wound their way into everyday objects as well. Perhaps you might have noticed a man adjusting his belt or sipping conspicuously from a coffee cup. Even a cigarette held a certain way, or lit with a precise flare, could be laden with unspoken nuances. It was a masterclass in talking out loud while never uttering a word. Of course, navigating this colorful labyrinth safely required more than just taste in good draping. It demanded a knack for craftsmanship. One had to be vigilant, for while these codes served as a protective shield, they were also susceptible to misinterpretation. An accidental fashion faux pas could lead to misunderstanding quicker than you could say dupione silk. Yet, in such a world of whispers and winks, finding a kindred spirit was like striking gold in a color-coded mine, unexpected, thrilling, and surely heart-affirming. Amid society's boundaries, through clever adaptation and an instinct for invention, gay men forged not only networks, but bonds that stood resilient against the tides of time. As the night whispers gently carry you further into dreamland, hold on to the notion that sometimes the simplest gestures can leave the largest impressions. Paintings of camaraderie and kinship hues that only those with knowing eyes may see. When you feel the relaxation grounding in, casting aside today's worries like stray dolls on a well-made bed, allow whispers from reverie's past to cradle you towards chapter 13, where we'll continue this nocturnal exploration through the pastel-hued paths of history. Rest easy, knowing that the world, rich with hidden histories, often blooms in the soft glow of secrecy and solidarity. In 1950s America, the world was a vibrant painting that chose to shroud itself in grayscale. People wore suits and dresses like polished armor, and even the cars resembled sleek, metallic steed hybrids that modern scientists only dream of today. Yet, beneath this monochrome masquerade, an effervescent community honed a language of colors that buzzed quietly but surely into existence. In an era where conformity was the unwavering social majesty, a subtle kaleidoscope subsisted among us. Enter the hanky code, a crisp decade or two before the exuberant neon of disco lit up dance floors and minds alike. Gay men in the 1950s were already ahead of their spectrally subdued time. Using discreet pocket squares, hankies and bandanas, they spoke in hues when speaking out loud wasn't an option. Imagine, if you will, a life-sized game where participants communicated through clandestine signals tucked away into back pockets. Just like someone with a fondness for organizing a drawer only they understand, each color, and indeed each side, told a story. A red hanky peeking out from your left pocket, you might be murmuring to the world about a dalliance in dominance, paled by modern standards. A dark blue hidden away neatly in the right pocket might delicately whisper of different romantic aspirations. The vibrant tapestry of identity, folded into squares of cloth, could easily send antique hearts a-thumping. But beware, young wanderer, through time and narrative, lest you fancy your yellow scarf the essence of sophistication and daring. You may find that in 1950s, parlance yellow simply signaled a penchant for what some might call pedestrian transport. Beyond the palette of desires, the hanky code was an entire chronicle embroidered in diverse personalities. Chartreuse for the bold or faint-hearted, each swap of fabric was a shifting verse in a hidden poem of companionship. Of course, the men donning these cryptic textiles were masterful in other arts as well. When subtle gestures needed augmentation, our savvy pioneers expanded their sartorial lexicon. Ascots and socks joined the symphony, and frankly, what they could do with boutonnieres would make the head of any botanist spin. You might say there existed a silent, floral revolution right under the noses of the unsuspecting suburbs. Clandestine dancing aside, these games were conducted with all the discretion of a magician's apprentice caught in a blustery wind. Subtle nods and bashful exchanges served the community in lieu of open dialogue, a nod to necessity woven through every sartorial strand. It speaks to the human genius for innovation, finding safety and solidarity in the folds of unsanctioned fabrics. The hanky code wasn't devised simply out of whimsy, but necessity. A textile defense against societal disapproval, a quietly proud flag amidst the echo of shoe-shined austerity. Through these little, colorful squares, community blossomed and connected in ways the outer world could never imagine. We learn that grace, humor, and identity often flourish insidiously in the face of adversity, not with a bang, but with the subtlety of silk concealed in cotton. With our minds warmed by the clever resiliency of fabric-speaking men, night descends gently once more. Close your eyes and tuck today's woven whispers into the vast library of gentle dreams and forgotten stories. Let us drift onwards, where even more resplendent secrets await, wrapped tightly in the weft and weave of history, a tapestry still connecting us to those who dared to say more with so little. In the calm whisper of post-war America, a quiet revolution was underway, cloaked in the most unassuming of garments. Picture this, a world painted in a wash of grayscale conformity, where men donned suits, ties, and just the right amount of Brill-cream. Yet amidst this monochrome palette, a hidden spectrum of subtlety danced under the surface. Indeed, in the 1950s, color had a secret language of its own, one especially known among gay men, a language woven from threads of gentle subterfuge. At the heart of this secretive sartorial semaphore were the daringly discreet hues of the handkerchief. Not just any swatch of cloth, the pocket square in those days became a vehicle for both style and subtext. Imagine, if you will, the feverish nuance with which a lavender-tinted kerchief might peek from a gentleman's suit pocket. This was not merely a dab of color against the drab backdrop of Eisenhower-era etiquette, but rather a dapper declaration whispered only to those fluent in its code. To those familiar, the wearing of such a vibrant square signaled more than mere color coordination. It was a badge of belonging to a clandestine club, a fabric flag waving in subtle defiance against an unwelcoming world. Lavender, in particular, emerged as a jubilant symbol, as indigo was too bold and navy, too mundane for such a statement of identity. Under its soft hue, men navigated social gatherings, bars and dances without ever speaking a word, passing these vivid winks and nods of camaraderie. The subtleness didn't stop at the pocket square. Indeed, an elaborate orchestration of colors could guide the savvy man through many a social situation. Bouquet-like boutonniere and the gleaming cufflink in unexpected pastel shades also joined the chorus of silent conversation. The language of color was a code both public and invisible, hiding in plain sight where it could never be officially deciphered by those outside the know. Thus did the sidewalk transform into a stage for this carefully curated performance. A tilt of a Ebola, a deliberately mismatched sock, the sheen of a patent leather shoe catching the afternoon sun, all part of an intricate dance steps ahead of society's norms. Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire could only dream of such choreography, their tuxedos a chorus line to a secret never once acknowledged on stage. Meanwhile, Cary Grant dazzled the cinema screens, blithely unaware, or perhaps acutely aware, of just how accurately his style choices resonated with these silent, sartorial storytellers. For many, watching his films was an act of inspiration as much as entertainment, his on-screen persona the epitome of sublimated elegance. Cary's twinkle, after all, was everlasting, much like the impact of one man's delicate necktie made from silk, spun slightly more magenta than it probably should be. Behind this stylish bravado was a world thrumming with the electric hum of resistance and hope, each stitch a testament to persistence in the face of unseen pressures. It was in these small acts of bravery, these micro-revolutions of fabric and flair, that many found their color in a world that demanded black and white. As we close this colorful chapter, imagine the day slipping gently into twilight, the descending calm mirrored in a smoky blue hue of evening skies. This canvas full of possibilities erases boundaries between shadows and light, inviting you to wander in dreams yet to be realized. When the next step in our whispered journey beckons, it will be into a realm where these codes saturate stories yet untold, as quietly transformative as the colors they wear. In the midst of the tapestry that was 1950s America, amidst the fog of cigarette smoke and the jazz notes swirling around in packed speakeasies, there was a world hidden just beneath whispered conversations and coded glances. The world of colors had taken on new meanings, not in the bright hues of fashion, but in the subtle cues of connection and understanding among gay men who navigated a society less than welcoming to their truths. The 50s, a decade swirling with optimism, post-war prosperity, and apparently an insatiable love for pastel kitchens. Yet, beneath the sheen of American conformity, there was an entire color wheel discreetly circulating through clandestine networks. And let's be honest, anyone who's ever looked at a kaleidoscope knows that colors rarely travel alone. Indeed, these were hues with purpose, spinning tales of resistance and identity. Picture for a moment the quiet bravery of a handkerchief peeking from a pocket, a shade that might betray more secrets than a diary locked with a flimsy key. You might think, what could a simple piece of cloth possibly convey? Well, dear listener, the answer is a semaphore as effective as any lighthouse beacon. This was a time when the very color of your handkerchief could signal more than just a preference for dapper accessories. Yes, the hanky code. While it's a tad on the nose, or rather the pocket, in its e-labeling, it served distinctly as the unspoken language of the streets. Each color, each hemisphere of fabric, signified a whole spectrum of desire and identity. You see, in a time when words could be perilous, colors spoke volumes. A glance at a man's handkerchief could reveal as much as any Shakespearean aside, deftly murmuring, "I see you. I am one of you." Lavender, once scorned as an effeminate colour and nearly driven out of town on rails for its presumed lack of masculinity, held court among these signals. It was the hue of letters penned in ink and kept beneath mattresses, and it whispered of a love as deep and true as any penned by more famous authors. To don lavender was to embody courage in vulnerability, a paradox wrapped in fabric, if you will. Peering down the spectrum, your eyes might catch a dash of green, or was it blue? The lighting in these jazz clubs was always more dimly atmospheric than functional, after all. Nevertheless, each shade and each fold of cloth held its own clandestine message of love or lust, or something deliciously mischievous in between. Just as painters of old found symbolism in their entire palette, these brave souls carved meaning out of chromatic chaos. They, the unheralded artists of everyday life, painted their vibrant desires amidst a canvas of grey conformity and hidden fears. It wasn't all handkerchiefs and hues, however. The palette of history shows us a myriad of expressions. A corsage of violets, much like Wilde would have appreciated, was more than just botanical elegance. It was a 2-inch shout through the silence. And weren't those the real rebels? The ones who turned even the act of flower-wearing into something that sprouted with intention and defiance. As collective as the code was, so too was it kaleidoscopic, changing, evolving, adapting like any good improvisational riff in a blues melody. And while not every color choice was understood by those outside this artful network, the power and importance it held for those within was a beacon, shining through the fog of societal disapproval and fear. It wasn't merely about finding one another. It was about understanding the intrinsic beauty within oneself. So, as you gently drift into dreams, thinking of dusk skies and secret notes exchanged under the cover of moonlight, know that these small bursts of color bound souls together in an unbreakable, albeit secret symphony. May we yet remember the vibrant resilience in this patchwork quilt of history, where every thread, every hue, pulled tighter, whispered promises of solidarity and love untold. And now, as our story takes a gentle pause, let us wander into the tender hues of dreams, perhaps to explore what odd adventures history's midnight scroll will unveil next. In the soft glow of twilight, where our minds float like dandelion seeds on an evening breeze, we meander through the crumbly pages of a time capsule, unraveling the enchanting and somewhat hidden tapestry of 1950s gay culture, a time when subtlety wasn't just an art form, but a survival skill. The 1950s, a decade often depicted in glorious black and white, with a splash of pastel, like a TV dinner's artificially neon peas. It was a world of sock hops, poodle skirts, and the omnipresent fear that somewhere, somehow, Elvis's hips were gyrating excessively. Among these cultural oddities was a secret language, a rainbow of whisper-soft signals that spoke volumes without saying a word. Imagine, if you will, the buzzing color codes of hankies and rings, a bit like semaphore but tailored to fit discreetly in one's back pocket or proudly upon a finger. Let's visit an ordinary day at the local soda fountain, where a sip of cherry cola was often punctuated by curious glances and subtle nods. There was more to a man's attire than the perfect crease in his trousers or the shine on his Oxfords. The placement and color of a handkerchief told tales that were far juicier than any neighborhood gossip. A simple piece of cloth transcended its role, functioning not as a mere wipe for the occasional ice cream spill, but as a beacon in a clandestine night sea. For example, a light blue hanky, fluttering gently from a gentleman's right pocket, signaled a penchant for something adventurous. How thrilling to think a casual stroll down the street could be a rhapsody of silent symphonies, where every passing glance spoke of companionship and identities discovered. Venture further into this chromatic wonder where rings glittered subtly on fingers. Those bands weren't just shiny bling for a hand. Oh no. But encoded messages meant for the chosen few who could decode their glint. Picture the silver ring, an accomplice in crafting connections without uttering a sole syllable, not unlike Morse code, but bedecked with sartorial swagger. And then there were those gatherings, those speakeasy-like soirees that promised evenings of laughter and camaraderie beneath a shroud of secrecy. Picture cozy living rooms filled with soft jazz, the scent of sweet cologne mixing with the whispers of friendship. Here, people could drop the pretense like an old hat and talk freely without fear of reprisal from the usual societal arbiters who policed merriment with the efficiency of a cheerful yet unyielding hall monitor. Ah, but we mustn't forget the hats. Hats of every imaginable style, not just for sun-blocking or perplexing pigeons, but rather acting as another layer of flavor to the personality parfait. A nod of the brim here, a slight tilt there, and the invisible dialogue continued, rich and effervescent, throughout bustling avenues and sleepy suburbia alike. Evening would descend, draping its velvet canopy over the city as conversations unfolded over a shared malted milkshake or whispered in the hushed corners of libraries. The analyses of egg creams and the latest Hollywood heartthrobs masked conversations about secrets and truths, codified in shades worthy of a Monet summer garden. And now, let the pastel hues of our historical kaleidoscope dim for a moment as we find ourselves drifting gently into the folds of our pillows. Tomorrow, we shall wander once more among the bygone alleyways and quiet corners where whispers carried the weight of the unspoken. For now, tuck yourselves comfortably into your slumber, knowing that each chapter, like each folded handkerchief and every glistening ring, adds richness to the ever-unfolding story of those boldly painted lives. As we tiptoe into the serene world of 1950s America, imagine a realm where colors spoke softly, mingling around like a secret society, dressed in plain sight. You see, what was grey to the untrained eye might just have been a symphonic blend of muted pastels sending clandestine signals to those in the know. Our journey tonight takes us into the discreet art of color coding that existed with a silent understanding among gay men, a secret language hidden in plain colors beneath the repressive mainstream. Back in the era when television sets were still met with wonder and the world embraced muted colors in fashion as a soothing hug after the rainbow chaos of wartime, hidden among these palettes was a secretive brilliance. Picture a man named Henry taking his routine walk down Main Street, where paisley ties and herringbone jackets tell tales just as eloquent as any Shakespearean sonnet. That day, akin to others, he wore a soft lavender shirt, a color chosen for neither accident nor whimsy, but one that spoke unuttered volumes to the right eyes. Lavender, a soothing hue nestled somewhere between the blues of corporate walls and the delicate pink of a waking dawn, was heralded as an emblematic color of gay men in the 1950s. It whispered secrets of identity and camaraderie in a landscape that didn't yet have words for them. And so, nestled in the stitching of Henry's cuffs, this soft shade revealed its quiet truth, an unassuming banner of self and epic solidarity. As Henry meandered past shop windows displaying tan suits and gloved mannequin hands that never waved back, he might pass another who wore a splash of green, a peculiar handkerchief peeking from a breast pocket. You'd think it odd, amusing even, to match a forest green square with a caramel cream coat, but fashion, much like history, often hides the punchline in its patterns. In the 1950s, a green handkerchief might signify interest and availability, a foliar semaphore in the fabric of social interaction. For those like Henry and his contemporaries, navigating this chameleonic kaleidoscope required the wit of a sleuth. But therein lay the magic. Fashion was both their armor and their art. Within the restraints of societal norms, clothes conditioned and arranged themselves into a kaleidoscopic language, one with dialects as varied as the ticks of a clock. To appreciate the silent conversations that strolled the sidewalks, you'd need only dive into something as gloriously unassuming as a blinking necktie or a shyly rolled-up sleeve. Yet, Hidden within these color codes and minutiae was a quiet rebellion, tinged with humor and fraternity. Men who'd perhaps share nothing more than a tipped hat or a lingering glance partook in a vibrant tapestry of covert communication. This network, as delicate and intricate as lacework, wrapped them in an unspoken fraternity. Thus, in an age where flamboyance had to reside only within the heart, these garbs of gentle hues and coded cloth became a silent revolt, a cherubic grin at the face of conformity. It was much like attending a costume party where each attendee was blindfolded, except some possessed a hidden map into the costume itself. As the shadows lengthened into an indigo evening, and the world of Main Street softened its clatter to a distant hum, Henry returned to the warmth of his apartment. The lavender shirt was folded. The theatrics of the outside world paused for another day. These were, after all, the acts of those who understood the humor of invisibility and the warmth of companionship wrapped tightly in the cloak of the everyday. And as the door clicked shut, the dusty rose of sunset outside changed shifts with the deep blues of evening, filling the room with tranquil shadows. Henry sat with a sigh, perhaps with a silent pledge to another day written in the chic lines of his wardrobe, a pledge not just of identity, but of the enduring patience and peaceful resistance of color. And so we leave those secret conversations woven into the very threads of yesterday, pondering how tomorrow's stage might reveal itself. As this gently descends into the pastures of our dreams, you might wonder what other hushed revolutions, hidden in seemingly innocuous gestures, might have been long forgotten. In the tranquil twilight of the 1950s, where the air was touched with a hint of post-war optimism and the hum of electric razors filled suburban neighborhoods, an entire subculture emerged into the margins, whispering secrets in the language of colors. Imagine a time when the lack of a Wi-Fi network forced people to find creative solutions for community building. This was a decade of secret codes and quiet rebellions, and much of it could fit in your pocket. While the general public was busy perfecting their jive moves and debating whether Lucille Ball's iconic laughter was more riotous than Ethel's chuckles, a subtler dance unfolded in plain sight, marked by the subtle art of sartorial cues. The color pink, long before its teenage poster child Barbie used it to define her dream world, became a sly semaphore for gay men. But here's where things get even more layered than a Jell-O salad at a Midwestern potluck. These codes weren't just about colors. Each hue, each shade, had its own nuance. You see, the rainbow wasn't always as explicit as your average post-1990 parade float. It was, at times, as understated as a Sinatra wink. Let's dawdle a bit. On the color green. Now, green doesn't just mean go. It was significant for its signaling purposes without the need for overt displays, which were, given the era, quite risky business. Wearing a green tie, for instance, wasn't just about matching your shirt. It was akin to a secret handshake in a world where handshakes came with raised eyebrows. Oh, and let's not forget the codes of the handkerchief, subtly slipped into rear pockets like little flags of freedom in faded Levi's. Blue might have whispered that you were a mild-mannered sort, while red could imply a zest for danger, or perhaps an affinity for strawberry preserves. Each shade spoke volumes in places like Webster Hall or underground bars in Greenwich Village, where the jazz was lively and the crowd was livelier, yet eyes always keen, ears ready for the coded exchange. Naturally, there were those who accidentally fell into the kaleidoscope of color-coded communication, like poor Howard Durbendorf from Oklahoma, who simply loved his jacket in a particularly punchy shade of lavender. Little did Howard know, each time he wore that jacket into the big city, he sparked conversations he was entirely unprepared to engage in. Yet, despite an innocent bewilderment, he did become a beloved ally, with his cheerful naivete and penchant for apricot marmalade. Now, one wouldn't say these codes were foolproof, but they provided a comforting illusion of order amidst the chaos of discretion. While mainstream America nattered on about the newest episode of Howdy Doody, a network of quick glances and nods was knitting itself into the fabric of history, stitching a quiet strength into the lives of those who dared to connect in their authenticity, albeit through nuances as gentle as the cat-like stretch of a satin ribbon. As the moon rose over diners serving up the latest culinary invention, the fabled TV dinner, and Elvis's hips shook a nation, many kept shaking their own signal, but ever so much. On the inside, a knowing wink, a tipsy wink, a stumble in sync, color dancing silently among black and white TV shadows. As you snuggle deeper under your own quilt of thought and curious wonder, remember this silent chorus, these subtle rebels of the pastel and primary palette, whose whispers pave the way for louder voices and brighter rainbows. Their world might have spun slower, yet wasn't it beautifully intricate, a soft-toned testament of perseverance? Glide gently on the threads of this winding history. Let its stories knit a dream of half-forgotten raves and the daring of quiet revolutions. With a hint of midnight now softly craning its neck toward tomorrow, the tapestry in Chapter 19 awaits to unravel another thread-worthy tale. Until then, drift towards sleep, cradled by the soft glow of these remembered colors. As the evening settles into whispers and dreams, we'll meander into the pastel-tinged reality of the 1950s, a time when society wore a crisp, well-ironed facade, but underneath, semaphore flags of vibrant rebellion signaled a secret community. Tonight, we explore the curious case of the handkerchief code, used by gay men, a clandestine language of colors and fabrics whispered in the spaces between straight-laced expectations. Enter the twilight world of mid-century America, where robust masculinity ruled the roost, and reruns of shows like Leave It to Beaver painted a black and white picture of perfection. Meanwhile, in the chromatic shadows, gay men were deftly employing a rainbow of handkerchiefs, crafting a tapestry of hidden identities and desires. A well-placed rayon or cotton square in your back pocket meant more than mere cleanliness. It was a passport into an underground world of camaraderie, love, and humor. Imagine a quiet evening at a local bar, the cozy hum of smooth jazz playing on the jukebox. There, amidst the clinking glasses, stood Bill, an impeccably dressed fellow with a penchant for plaid ties and a notable sprig of lavender peeking from his back pocket. You see, much like a peacock flaunting his plumage, Bill sported this colored handkerchief to silently declare his interest in a particular facet of companionship. Lavender, in this case, hinted at Bill's affinity for the arts, and perhaps a certain je ne sais quoi that might involve creative footwork. Ah, the language of the hanky code. It was as nuanced and sophisticated as a Shakespearean sonnet, with colors speaking volumes. A bold red handkerchief peeking from the left back pocket might have signified that you fancied yourself the assertive type, while the right implied a preference for your partner to take center stage. A dark blue hanky. Let's just say you might be ready for one serious game of hide and seek, but we'll keep the secrets of that little adventure tucked between warm sheets. After all, discretion and allure were the name of the game. Venturing further into the fabric of this secret language, one might glimpse Ted, another adventurous fellow from the era. With a jaunty yellow square tucked into his belt, Ted suggested he was in the mood for something a bit more playful, perhaps a friendly game of badminton. Or was it something else entirely? The code, while straightforward for the initiated, seemed as cryptic as hieroglyphics to the unknowing and buttoned-up majority. Of course, not everyone was adept at this game of hues and threads. The occasional faux pas did occur, often with deliciously humorous results. Picture the charming but oblivious Edward, much too fond of fashion, walking the city streets with a light green handkerchief, entirely unaware that he'd inadvertently signified his attraction to a particular type of gentleman who might enjoy leisurely strolls under a full moon. While Edward reveled in his newfound popularity, the rest of us can share a knowing smile, enjoying the soft chuckle of history's gentle irony. Although some might argue there were other codes, perhaps in deeper hues and more forbidden textures, what remains in the tapestry of the past is the undeniable truth that these handkerchiefs were less a declaration and more a delightful whisper, a wink to those in the know, dancing in the margins of conformity. As we gently fold up our tale of colors and concealment, imagine drifting into a world where every swatch of fabric has a secret and every gentleman hides an epic in his back pocket. Tuck these dreams around you like a warm quilt as we ease softly toward our next chapter, where we'll discover how another corner of history offers its own quirky lullaby in this slumber-filled odyssey. As the warm amber glow of the 1950s streetlight flickered down on moonlit pavements, an intricate ballet of coded messages and unspoken understandings unfolded beneath. In a world spun tightly by societal norms and whispered prejudices, there existed a quiet rebellion among gay men, an art form, almost, of expression without expression. Imagine, if you will, a secret language in color, pastels and patterns wielded not just for style but as subtle signposts of identity. Our tale tonight unfurls around hankies and socks, ties, and the occasional cufflink, a veritable tapestry of secret signals. Picture a gentleman strolling down Fifth Avenue, his pace leisurely yet purposeful, with a handkerchief, pale blue, gracefully tucked into his breast pocket. To the uninformed, it was merely an accessory, but within certain circles, this represented something more. Here was a man boldly declaring his openness to connection, friendship, perhaps more, among those who spoke the same clandestine dialect. This quiet communication extended to socks, of all things. Brightly colored ankle adornments peeking from beneath sensible slacks, subtly shared messages of camaraderie in spaces where words could not. Oh, the stories those socks could share if only they had tongues. Picture a devastatingly handsome bartender at a dimly lit enclave of a club, glancing down at the crimson socks of a patron, knowing instantly a shared secret, a fleeting understanding made simply in the flutter of fabric. And then, let us not forget the necktie, ever the gentleman's staple and a surprisingly potent purveyor of subtext. A tie, mind you, could speak volumes. It's hard to imagine a piece of silk holding such power, but with careful color and pattern selection, it did just that. A paisley in deep purple might hint at a penchant for art museums and jazz. A vibrant plaid could whisper of playful evenings under the stars. This was fashion not just of the body, but of the soul. Yet this language was not static. It was fluid, like a gentle stream, continually adapting to the ever-evolving landscape of mid-century America. Trends would shift, old signals would fade, and new ones emerged. Quiet revolutions of style played out across department store counters and bustling avenues. But perhaps the true artistry here was the graceful balance of survival and identity these men managed to maintain. Much like a chameleon that dons the colors of its landscape, they wore society's norms over their subtle cues, ensuring safety while expressing the hues of their true selves. It is fascinating to think that such ordinary items, simple and unassuming on their own, could form the very fabric of connection in a world that often felt cold and isolating. In knit, weave, and pattern, these men found ways to reach out to each other across the gaps of time and space, creating ties that might have gone unnoticed to the untrained eye, but were undeniably felt in the heart. So as you close your eyes tonight, visualize these masters of sartorial subtlety, clad in their secret language, navigating a world that so rarely understood them. Know that within each thread and fiber lay dreams knitted together like stories under a quilt of stars. As we drift onward to the next moment in time, ponder the resilience woven into those threads, the courage it took to wear them proudly, and the profound connections they sought, finding comfort despite the shadows. Into the gentle fold of history we go, each footstep inviting us deeper into understanding, our journey nowhere near its end, but rather awaiting the whispers of a new chapter's beginning. Sleep softly, dear listener. Imagine, if you will, a peaceful twilight settling over a mid-century America where everything seems to move at a slower, less hurried pace. Television sets adorned with rabbit ear antennas glow in cozy living rooms. Newspapers rustle softly as fathers turn the pages to learn the latest honest-to-goodness news. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of a bustling diner, a pair of gentlemen might be exchanging glances, each weighing the level of blue in his tie. Welcome, dear listener, to a time when subtlety was an art form, particularly for those who had to decode society's unspoken rules with delicacy. You see, in the 1950s, an era more infamous for its strict conformity than its liberation, a clever system of subtle color codes emerged, akin to semaphore, but swankier. More than just a fashion blip, these codes served as secret signals for gay men. Think of it as a sartorial espionage, where particularly the color of your tie could mean the difference between merely dapper and decidedly dashing in the eyes of the right observer. Let's ease into this idea, like a cat gingerly stepping onto a damp lawn. Back then, risk and discretion danced an intricate waltz. To misstep could mean a headline disaster. However, a well-practiced nod to this subtle language allowed men to find connection and community amidst an environment that's unkind to outliers. The color green, for instance, was said to be worn by men who were in the know. It was a vibrant secret handshake clasped between silk fibers. Another hue that might have graced many a lapel was the color lavender, a pastel, yes, but loud in its quiet confidence. Was it just a color, a choice, or a declaration wrapped discreetly around one's neck? Even with its botanical connotations, lavender was known for signaling someone outside the run-of-the-mill box of traditional masculinity of the era. Wearing such a shade meant you walked lightly on a bridge of audacity above the narrow stream of convention. For those with a daring streak, the color red made for a bold choice. Perhaps too obvious a beacon for some, but a bold flag for others that waved in the winds of courage. Whether a popped red pocket square or a crimson kerchief peeking from a pocket, it was more than flair. It was a semaphore of sentiment, a reaffirmation of identity chosen with intention. Fascinated we are, like fine tea leaves swirling in a warmly brewed cup, gently tipped by these unspoken understandings. Clothes became a canvas in a world eager to paint everything beige. In this shadowy espionage of fashion, even socks could speak. A peak of periwinkle at the ankle could be a whisper, sometimes overlooked, yet loudly heard by those attuned to such clandestine broadcasts. In the enchanted footnotes of history, where facts meet dreams, we find tales of these color codes weaving around lives as a bridge over the troubled waters of a judgmental age. There's something almost magical about the reality of it, a gentle magic that warms the soul even more than the nostalgia-tinged glow of a vintage streetlight. And with a flourish to our gentle exploration through the kaleidoscope of meaning woven into the threads of yesteryear's style, we drift onward. Our journey in this twilight reverie isn't over just yet. There's yet another chapter to uncover, where perhaps the stories get wilder, the colors even more vibrant, or maybe, just maybe, they settle into softer shades as our narratives fade gently into the night. So let us drift, our sails caught by the enticing winds of next, towards even more dreamlike passages of a past filled with secrets and stories waiting to shimmer to the surface. Picture this tranquil scene. It's the 1950s, and the world is advised to keep its secrets tucked neatly underneath layers of repressed societal norms, just like a well-made bed. Yet even as the conservatism of the era seemed to dictate monochromatic expectations, a subtle rainbow of rebellion shimmered underneath, whispering its truths for those attuned to its clandestine hues. During this time, the gay community crafted a language of their own, a shade-driven semaphore, if you like, executed with the grace of a covert opera. Theaters, bars, and parks weren't just locations. They became vibrant canvases for these secret conversations, with fashion choices serving as a necessary lexicon. While today's world drowned in gossip columns about which starlet wore what shade of lipstick, there existed an even more riveting story tucked into the folds of a beige jacket pocket. Those ordinary handkerchiefs, for instance, took on roles beyond their traditional use of dabbing away a sneaky teardrop during an exaggerated movie scene. These kerchiefs became communicative flags, each color a code. Who would have thought that cinder grays and coal blacks could whisper a sonnet of empathy or signal a shared heartbeat? Now, you may find yourself wondering, how did something as common as a handkerchief manage to synchronize clandestine hearts? It's rather simple and ingeniously complicated all at once. Imagine two gentlemen, their gazes momentarily crossing paths in the midst of a bustling cafe, some jazz humming in the background. One might adjust his tie while the other reveals a glimpse of a sky blue kerchief peeking from his pocket. A silent inquiry and response, encapsulated in a moment of mutual understanding. Oh, but colors spoke more variations of this secret symphony. A blush of pink represented a kindred spirit in search of conversation or perhaps companionship, while a softly yielding lavender suggested a willingness to explore life's more flamboyant fabrics. Picture this scene unfurling like leaves of a secret garden. A light orange bandana wrapped lazily around a tender wrist meant there was a story to tell or a dance to share. Navigating this hue-based harmony of social etiquette was nothing short of a masterclass in empathetic observation. It required precision, deftness, and the slightest inclination of trust, a daring and delightful high-wire act where the stakes were nothing less than one's own heart. Sure, the mainstream chose to see the world in absolutes. Black and white existed as a symphony of rules laid out in ink and paper. But for those who embraced life's vivid array of signals, life was a polychromatic ballet, and a colorful rebellion it was, dancing defiantly in the shadows. Even more enchanting was how each shade, when spoken in its understated elegance, carried with it a thrilling promise, the promise of belonging. So here we are, weaving through memory's patchwork fabric, gently revealing the joy and secrecy meticulously sewn into past lives. And as we linger over these recollections, we see them not merely as bygone quirks of old, but as delicate stitches linking the world's countless hues, each one a part of humanity's greater tapestry of love and connection. Perhaps these subtle color codes of the past serve as reminders today, that in the quietness of whispered hues lies an enduring legacy of courage. What could be more soothing than realizing that even then, in times less tolerant, human connection found its way through the simplest things: a coded handkerchief, a fleeting glance, a soft smile. And with this thought, we gently turn the page, savoring this learned harmony as we glide, like an exhale into calming slumber, into those nocturnal moments of rest, but also with the anticipation of what will be unfurled next in our shared journey through time's inquisitive kaleidoscope. As the twinkling starlight began to spill over the rooftops of the 1950s, casting the world in a hushed sepia glow, a secret language was quietly doing its rounds, unnoticed by many, yet profoundly profound for those in the know. Ah, the world of color codes, so subtle, so powerful, and most importantly, so delightfully puzzling. You see, in this era, when conformity was both a fashion trend and a social imperative, the language of color offered an opulent tapestry of covert communication. Pastels and deeper shades, beyond the usual chromatic suspects, held clandestine conversations in the basement of social norms. Imagine slipping into a grand cocktail party where everyone seems to glide across the floor with a certain air of mystery in their step and the faint aroma of gin in the air. Now, amid the monochrome palette of this bustling scene, that one gentleman in the corner with the lavender tie and an infectious smile is conveying volumes without uttering a word. Was it just a sartorial choice? Or was lavender, a shade far softer on the eyes than the blazing rebellion red, a silent nod to a shared identity? You'd be correct to translate this as the latter. But did they exchange cryptic notes penned on Gettysburg Address-inspired sleeper agents? No, my dear dreamer. What they had was far more clever and, dare we say, vivid. Lavender, among other colors, was known as a signpost for those who studied under the grand canopy of the rainbow flag, before its full kaleidoscopic glory was brought into the spotlight by Gilbert Baker in the late 1970s. It was a semaphore of silence, swaying gently amidst the cacophony of social drums beating to a different rhythm. While lavender meandered around its fashion limelight, green carnations also made an appearance as a once dapper decoration. Notably adorned by the literary dandy Oscar Wilde, they had become a boutonniere for those in the know, quietly proclaiming alliances with an elegant flourish. And let us not forget the powers embedded within pastel handkerchiefs discreetly, peeking from coat pockets, not just a sign of a gentleman's good grooming. These were codes, each shade and fold a carefully crafted syllable of social defiance, written in the silent language of common understanding. Or perhaps you found yourself waltzing across the glistening floors of a retro tea dance if you were a touch more daring, donning socks of a certain hue, flickering miraculous Morse messages as you spun gracefully across the parquet to the echoes of swing and jazz rippling through the air. These colors acted as both shields and swords. They were signifiers of defiance, beaming with individuality, yet empowering a silent fraternity to find its place within caverns of secrecy that society was quick to build and wall up with cemented ignorance. The story illuminated in these subtle hues was one of resilience and courage, a testament to those who strove to paint outside the lines when society endeavored to tighten the monochrome noose. It was a world where a simple choice in accessory was akin to a triumphant shout from atop a grassy knoll, albeit whispered and shadowed by night. As the clock ticks towards the end, we find ourselves at the threshold. Bars are readying their last call, patrons lulling into quiet conversations, and Chapter 23 glides and twirls its way to the finale. While some might exchange soft farewells, the baton of our colorful dance may just be on the cusp of one last display. As dreams begin their gentle descent, hold tight, for history, just like those vibrant hues, has one final curtain call yet to unfold. By the time we reach the illustrious Chapter 24, the 1950s have taken on a kind of mythic glow, like one of those old movies where everyone wears impeccable suits and the soundtrack is perpetually jazzy. Our adventure of secret signals and daring dashes under the radar of societal norms comes to a cozy denouement, poised at the intersection of color and culture, in a decade now saturated with hues of lavender, sea, foam green, and every shade of clandestine connection. Ah, the 1950s. A decade where color was not just aesthetic, but communicative, though most people still clung to their black and white televisions. For gay men, these vibrant threads of color woven into daily life were more significant than any network primetime program. The sartorial choices, often more deliberate than ever met the eye, functioned like a secret semaphore, enabling whispered conversations in a bustling social dance of quiet defiance. In this scene of chromatic intrigue, let us picture the archetypal 1950s diner. Leather-upholstered booths, formica-topped tables, and that perfect, pie-slicing waitress who possesses eyes for rolling without missing an order. Here, amidst the glow of neon and the clatter of dishes, two men might share more than just a milkshake split with two straws. A tie in just the right shade of lavender could speak volumes more than the menu ever could. Lavender, you see, became a subtle rallying point, a color that managed to glide past the radar of those who presumed heterosexuality encased all worthy social transactions. Derived from the lilac's blooms and lavandula's essence, this hue operated as a gentle nudge, a secret wink. It encapsulated a world of withering dreams, one that denied the overt acknowledgement of its existence, making every discreet use of color a masterstroke of social choreography. And then, there was the power of the handkerchief. Antiquarian today, the handkerchief was, back then, a utilitarian accessory and a cryptic cipher, depending on its placement in one's pocket, left, right, or in a rare and brave moment, flaunting its full spectrum. A pocket handkerchief could reflect its carrier's hope for friendship beyond handshakes or whispers over malteds. Perhaps you've heard of the more flamboyant handkerchief code that would later flourish in the 1970s. This was its forebearer, a softer precursor in lace and linen. Underneath this, sartorial language was the quiet evolution of places that became symbols of respite. Barbershops, for instance, often doubled as informal hubs for those in the know. Sporting their own codes, sometimes communicated by the music on the radio, other times by a knowing grin between mirror and shear. A haircut wasn't simply a haircut. Far from it. It was a transformative act, where chairs became thrones and capes, presented in colors often spoke untold stories of camaraderie amidst the clippings. As we saunter through the last flickers of this era, let us not forget the glance exchanged in bus stations or the lingering touch over the Atlantic's liner rails. These held their own dialogues, a carefully constructed lexicon burgeoning with both fragile hope and tentative anticipation. Every soft smile was a declaration, every held gaze a benediction. It is here, in this silent camaraderie, where 1,000 love stories blossomed before quietly retreating into whispered histories. Now, as you nestle snugly into your cocoon of blankets, remember the stories you've heard of a time when color spoke what lips could not. Let the imagined aroma of lavender waft gently around you, easing you deeper into restful dreams. Welcome the soft serenity of twilight, where history's ghosts tiptoe lightly, bearing tales woven with kindness and courage. And so, as we conclude this hypnotic journey through code and quip, let history blanket you in the comfort that even the subtlest gestures can echo through the ages. Close your eyes and drift, confident in the warmth of human ingenuity, a slumber touched by the magic of history's softest secrets.